Hello, my name is Elizabeth Meaders, and I am a retired teacher who, like you, I love African American history. So today I would like to invite you to take a journey, and I'd like to share with you memorabilia in tribute to African American history that I've spent my entire life assembling and collecting. I'm a 93-year-old former school teacher, and I have spent more than 70 years on a dedicated pursuit of the glorious history of people that look like me, African Americans. And I call my collection a rebuttal. And you might say, rebuttal to what? A rebuttal to the prevalent belief that African Americans have no history. And you know that today African American history is under attack. So it's more important than ever to share the truth about African American history, which is a truly inspiring and interesting story of a shackled people who broke those shackles and then went on to do great, great things. And they're worthy of embracing. African American history is in need of a friend. We all suffer from the fact that African American history was never taught in the American school system, in spite of the fact that we are the Americans that have been here the longest. Our history here starts in the 1600s. So, of course, we were making history. We helped to build America, this great democracy, and you had to be here to build here. So our story is so incredibly important. I don't have the world's best collection. Nobody does, because African American history, it's a work in progress. And everywhere, somewhere, an African American is making history. But today, I'd appreciate your patience while you share my life's work as a tribute to the greatness of African American people. Now, what is so important is I am documenting African American military history. So anything that I show, it has been corroborated that it consists of the achievements of an African American military person. Over here, I have cases that have artifacts related to African American Civil War veterans. And everything here is incredibly rare, but absolutely documents contributions made by African Americans in the Civil War. And throughout this garage, different wars are being represented. This is particularly unique. This is the Vietnam War. And in the Vietnam War, our poor black soldiers, they are fighting and they're looking at television and they're seeing how their people are being treated at home. So they go to the Vietnamese women who make money by doing embroidery for them. And one of them gave them this hat. I don't want to die in no white man's war. And the whole hat has symbols and messages on it that make it clear that these veterans know that there's something out of sync with their participation in a war while their people are being brutalized on the home front. I don't want to die in no white man's war. As I said, in order for these things to fit in my collection, they must be authenticated as being the property of participants who were African Americans in the various wars. So we have up here a Buffalo Soldier dress parade hat, and we have other hats that represent different wars. Remember that all of these are rarities. There's nothing more difficult to collect than African military memorabilia because so much of it was thrown away. African Americans came back from wars destitute in many cases. So they wore the uniforms, they used everything that was relevant to their experience. Over here, I have identified from the Civil War and the Buffalo Soldier era. I have rifles, I have swords, I have bayonets, and something that is what you would call poignant. This is a crutch, and a Civil War soldier, while he's recuperating, he's engraving all these messages to reaffirm his love of liberty. And it says on here, remember Fort Pillow. We will die for what is right. No freedom without courage. Help preserve the Union. Long live the Republic. Freedom is joy. Liberty at all costs. And might be a little hard to see these, but he has taken his time and he has engraved all these messages. For African Americans, sometimes the history is poignant, which means it touches your heartstrings because there's so much to the story. Here we have some wonderful plaques related to African American, their horses, their belts, and sometimes it's a pass that says that this one here says that this is a bearer and he is respected by the Anglo-American Anti-Slavery Association. Sometimes the Confederates would issue passes for blacks that were working for them, letting their fellow Confederates know that this particular black is on our side. Unique. In World War II, a black unit captured this Nazi flag. And what is so great about it is all of the soldiers signed their name and their address. And it would be wonderful for someone to track these people down and ask them, what was the story about your collecting this flag? The problem is these are the days before they had zip codes, so it will make it even that much harder. This is the job of a researcher. I am a gatherer of history. The researcher has to take the history I gather and tell you the whole depth of the story. So in here, in this overcrowded garage, are samples in every category, but I laid out for special recognition some of the military collection in which African Americans lay down their life. That is closest to my heart. These flags that I have, incredibly rare, incredibly important. And these crates, in my house, I have crates that are floor to ceiling all over the house. Most of them are labeled. All of them contain rebuttals to those who say African Americans had no history worthy of respect. We're not going to tolerate that viewpoint. It's just unfair and ungodly. So what we have in this room, I call this my slavery and abolition collection. Always remembering that it's not possible to tell this story. If I had to tell the story, I would start with the concept of branding human beings to prove ownership. And these are branding irons. So if a slave is lost and found and you want to prove ownership, you say, well, he has my brand. And of course, any slave that didn't follow the rules, another branding iron, we have something waiting for him, the cruelty of the whip. And to make sure that he doesn't get away, we're going to keep him shackled. And we have all kinds of variety of shackles. This one's called a fetter, and it goes on your ankle, and it's going to prevent you from running away, but oh, you can still pick that cotton. And I have a tribute, of course, to some of our leading abolitionists. history of slavery relies very heavily on documents. So I have crates of important documents that deal with slavery. And one of my collections that I think is so necessary is I have a collection of runaway slave ads in which they describe the slaves, and every ad is different. And oh, what a shock they present. Sometimes they say he had blonde hair and blue eyes. Now, what kind of slave was that? Is there any chance he could have been the owner's child? Sometimes they say he had no reason to run away. That's the one that really tricks my heart. He had no reason to run away. And if you will return him to me, you will get a reward. Some people call African Americans the enslaved people, but I call them the stolen people. Nobody brought a ticket to come here. They were kidnapped. So this is a record of slavery, not the whole record. It can't even be documented. There's so many secrets, most of them sad and evil. But here is, again, samples of slavery and abolition. And I have the greatest love for the abolitionists because they were the soul of America. They put their life on the line on a moral issue. And they were threatened, they were tarred and feathered, and they stuck with their belief that man is not supposed to enslave his fellow man. So I have a collection on the abolitionists and a documentation of this evil institution called slavery. Slavery, America's great disgrace. When I talk and think about slavery, I say, when America was born, the diapers were dirty, and the diapers were slavery. Remembering we're seeing at all times samples from the rebuttal and from the tribute to African American history. So every item that you see has a story in it. Ideally, if this collection were in a museum, the background story for each item can be properly displayed. A single collector can only use the space and the resources that they have. Over here, I have this beautiful monument to Sammy Davis, and it says, "You are the world's greatest entertainer," which is what he was. So every item has a story behind it. This is Ida B. Wells, Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, the trio of incredible, heroic, the most heroic women in America. Of course, we have Rosa Parks up here, and I have a second statue that I'm going to show you that shows the back, the bust, the reason for it all. And we wouldn't dream of leaving out our hero, Barack Obama. Ah, yes, here's my secret over in the corner. This is Hank Aaron. Doing the best I can, Hank. Now, can you see the back of the same Rosa Parks statue? This is really a cookie jar in honor of Rosa Parks. And this is the message in back of it. Now, over in these corners, you can see a wonderful tribute to Muhammad Ali and to Jersey Joe Walcott. I also have in my collection a magnificent collection on African American religion. This is a part of the tribute to Father Divine. When you have a religious leader who has a following of more than 1 million people, he's worthy of investigation and documentation. You're right of Father Divine and religion. I have just samples of wonderful trophies that our African American athletes earned. And some of them, they just make you smile with pride. Over here, this is a NACP Image Award given to Sugar Ray Robinson, and it's called the Jackie Robinson Image Award. And this same Sugar Ray Robinson, the computer took all of the statistics of every boxer and said, who was the greatest? And the conclusion was Sugar Ray Robinson, pound for pound, was the greatest boxer that ever lived. And to the right of Sugar Ray's document and sculpture is a tribute to the Harlem Globetrotters. The next one is Jim Brown. This one, believe it or not, is for O.J. Simpson. And this one is for Flo J. She's called the athlete, the female athlete of the decade. And over here I have a great letter written by Wilt Chamberlain, and someone has asked him, what does it take to be a champion? And he talks about character building and all the kinds of things that young people need to know about. So the collection, the military collection, is what I call a feel-good collection. Now, on the bottom of this shelf, I have sculptures of some of our heroes. This is Paul Robeson. This is Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, who performed the first heart surgery. This is Reverend Allen. And this is in the corner, Frederick McKinley, who invented refrigeration. And this again is Ida B. Wells. So on this same tray are sculptures of heroes. Some of them can be seen, some of them cannot. In the back I have Benjamin Banneker and Lewis Latimer. And I have Garrett Morgan. My house doesn't do worthy, it's not worthy of the greatness of these artifacts, but we have to make do with what we can. And this is the famous picture of our athletes showing Black power during the Olympics. I have Joe Lewis's bank books, his key to the city. I have a huge Joe Louis collection. This is a tribute to Lou Brock, and this is a tribute over here to Jackie Robinson. This is a Mike Tyson belt, championship belt, and this is a belt given to Muhammad Ali by the president of Indonesia, and this is a picture of him holding the belt. But even more important, this is the actual championship belt that Ken Norton won. He was the world champion at one point, and this is his belt. And this is proof of the belt. So all of these things are deserving of proper display. I am showing samples and the potential for how magnificent they would be if they were properly displayed, but at least we know they exist and they can be taken to the next level. As I said, Hank Aaron, this is when he hits 7:15. Hank Aaron, what a wonderful, see, what's great is when some of these athletes go beyond their skill and become outstanding citizens. And that's the story of so many. Jackie Robinson, even LeBron James today. Some of these athletes, they need to take their celebrity and give it back to America and to their own community. Next to May is a Joe Louis sculpture, bronze sculpture. And sitting on the sculpture is Muhammad Ali's boxing shoes. And on this tray, on this shelf over here, some other incredible things. I have Hank Aaron's wax figure, but what I love even more is when he hit 715, he got all kinds of telegrams. And I have a collection of telegrams congratulating Hank Aaron. I have a huge Hank Aaron collection. My sports collection is incredible, and it's a feel-good, prideful collection. Because in every sport, African Americans were locked out. It's really in the 50s that the doors begin to open, and when they open, the black athletes come through like a shooting star, and they change the whole tempo, the whole nature of every single one of these sports that they had been locked out of by racism and by people who disrespect and dismissed our beings as a people. And that is why we are in need of a rebuttal. This is Robert Smalls in a Civil War. This gentleman stole a Confederate warship and delivered it to the Union and shot America. The warship was loaded with ammunition and all kinds of valuable things. And he later became an important congressman. Robert Smalls, slave steals Confederate gunboat. And over here we have Bill Pickett, a folk hero who was like the most popular cowboy who ever lived. And he invented a technique where he actually wrestled bulls and bit their tongue and brought them to the ground. And audiences went crazy to see Bill Pickett. Bill Pickett. And what's so wonderful here is this is the U.S. Post Office, the actual plate that they used to make Bill Pickett stamps, U.S. stamps. Bill Pickett. And here's a picture of him, Bill Pickett. Marcus Garvey had a following that was international, in the millions. I have a collection on African American education. And over here, whenever you collect, you must go back as far as you can. This collection is chronological, going back as far as you can. Contextual, everything is in context. Every item is related to every other item. Comprehensive, the whole topic is covered. So we have 3 C's: chronology, context, comprehensive. That's what makes our tribute so important. Now we're coming to my basement, and we're going to primarily see what I call my civil rights and my civil wrongs collection. Let's find out what that means. One of the things that it means is when you document history, you must have what is called primary relics. What does that mean? It means the item must be directly connected to the event, not man-made. There are so many museums where they make pictures and blow them up, and they create their own statues. That is a memorial. It is not a museum, and it is not primary. Primary determines the integrity of your collection and of your museum. That is why we need a rebuttal. Please look at these primary photos from the civil rights movement. And I have a huge collection of primary photos. I'm going to show you some samples of my civil wrongs collection. This happens to be a quilt made by Ku Klux Klan women, and it includes the symbols that are dear to their heart. A little bit hard to see, but I want you to see the old familiars. We have our Klansmen over here, and they had the nerve to say that they were religious. I think I have this upside down. It's so big, but it's important. But I want you to see that there are symbols that they used. This is a Klansman. This is the flag. So when you are in the Klan, this is your life. So you are occupied with anything that glorifies your Klan. So this is a quilt made by the women in the Ku Klux Klan. So as I said, we're documenting civil rights and civil wrongs. The scope. This, when you belong to a hate group, it's your whole life. So you spend all your time there's a lot of money behind you, so you're making all kinds of propaganda to keep your organization alive. So this is civil wrongs. Now over here, would you believe that I have the Klan outfit of the Grand Dragon of Louisiana? This Grand Dragon actually killed blacks, and it was covered in newspapers. When he died, his wife wrote a book about him. And in the book, she sold some of his material, and I was able to buy his Klan outfit. These are Ku Klux Klan hate items documenting the civil wrongs movement. Over here, what do these Klans people want? They want pillowcases, they want hats, they want sashes. Now, would you believe they even want toys for their children? Here's their Ku Klux Klan water pistol. Here's the seal when they send out their communications. They buy for themselves badges and belts. KKK memorabilia, authentic, primary, related to the actual organization. Here's their cane, KKK. Here's their, you see that everything is inscribed, KKK. Here's their sword, KKK. Do you remember Lester Maddox? This hateful man owned a restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia, and he said, no blacks can come in here, and if they do, I'm beating them with this baseball bat, and I'm going to sign it for anybody who wants a memorial. Here's a small version. Lester Maddox. Oh, we got it upside down. Now, it's so important that racists do not by mistake use the wrong water. So on the job, here's the water for the blacks. And here's what we do with it. We put our bottle inside of this wooden case. This again, drinking your own water. Now here's something else you have to know. If you buy these clams, I want you to know that they were packed in their own nectar by white labor. Don't think blacks had anything to do with this. It's not contaminated. And if you want your hair done, you better make sure that you go to the colored barber shop. Memorabilia. An organization still alive and kicking with plenty of money behind it. Now, here's a primary item that was used in 1972 in Chicago in a protest march against the murder of Fred Hampton. Let's see. Okay, so what this says is avenge. Then, can you see that? Avenge Fred Hampton. And so this is primary. It was in a parade protesting the murder of Fred Hampton. Now, over to the right, I have my Dr. King tribute.
Be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream.
All rare, authentic, primary documents. All right, now, the word primary. There are a lot of civil rights museums, and to my horror and regret, they do not have enough primary items that actually came out naturally of the civil rights movement. Now, here's an example of something. In the Montgomery bus boycott, the whites began to get very angry at the success of it. So they began giving out these kinds of flyers telling the blacks what's going to happen to them if they don't remember who they are and where they are. And you can see the ignorance of the language. We've been doing okay in Montgomery before outside preachers were born. Ask Reverend King's papa and mama if they like his doing. Ask him if they're going to help in Atlanta. Better quit him before it's too late. So all of these are the kinds of things that you give out to keep your movement going. And of course, we remind African Americans every day the limits of what they better do and what they better not do. You can see a little tribute to Malcolm. Some varieties here. Samples primary, directly related to the civil rights movement. See, something like this is a monument to it, not particularly relevant to a specific event. Okay, so over here, primary items related to the civil, all of them rare. Now, what I have that I'm very proud of is actual collections of the membership of the Ku Klux Klan. And I have albums of the membership and the activities of the NAACP and of CORE and of white citizen councils. Who are the people involved? What are they doing? All documented in albums. Okay, over here, little documentation of this evil institution known as the Ku Klux Klan. And would you believe they have their own collection of 45 records? NAACP Jigaboo. Why the Klan burns crosses. Flight NAACP. All of them, caricatures making fun of us as a people. These are 45s. I have a whole collection of 78s. Same theme. Hatred and ridicule of the African American. This is material from Howard University. This is a famous professor named Ernest Just, and here's an actual photo of him at work. And what's so great about it is it's very early and everybody is identified. So this is a Howard University grouping showing us that these black colleges were effective at a very early time. This is actual invitations to the very first graduation of the Howard Medical College. And they had for the first time an African-American doctor on the faculty. His name was Dr. Alexander Augusta. And downstairs, when you saw my civil war items, I had a collection on this Dr. Alexander Augusta, who later became the very first doctor in America to be on the faculty of a medical college. So this is Howard University, part of my education collection. I have a magnificent show business collection. We always have to go back as early as we can. This is Black Patty, the 1800s, called Black Patty because a opera singer named Patty was the most popular in the world, so she was our Black Patty. So these are samples from our show business collection. And of course, Phyllis Wheatley is the earliest American poet. I have some items related to Bessie Coleman. I have a photo of her that is what we call extant, meaning nobody else has any such thing. This is Bessie Coleman, the first African-American female to have a pilot's license. And this is a doll in memory of her. Mary McLeod Bethune, one of our educators, one of the most important African-American women of the 20th century. This is Mary McLeod Bethune again, one of the most important African-American women, as I just mentioned. This is York, the explorer, that it made possible the Louisiana Purchase. Without his input, Lewis and Clark never would have survived, never would have documented Thomas Jefferson's Louisiana Purchase. Jackie Robinson is my ultimate hero and the reason that I started collecting at all. I loved him, so I started out looking for Jackie. And in the course of looking for Jackie 70 years ago, I became interested in the whole picture. And I said, oh my God, I've been lied to all my life. We have a history that's mind-blowing. I set out to create that history, to rebuttal what I've been taught. And I have been taught that I'm part of a group that has no history worth respecting, worth caring about. And once that hit me over the head like a hammer, this became my life obsession. This is Mr. Muhammad Ali, the most recognized man in the world, a folk hero, a man worthy of our respect. Marcus Garvey, a man who commanded 1 million followers and deserved them. I try not to be a bragger, but it's in my nature. I have the world's best civil rights collection. Letters from the civil rights pioneers, the most important people in the civil rights movement, and the most evil people in the civil rights movement. Nobody has this poster, but Lyndon Johnson was our civil rights president. And I have 3 magnificent, strong letters written by Lyndon Johnson. I have Martin Luther King letters. I have letters from Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, Hubert Humphrey, Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali. These are civil rights letters. Then I have an evil letter, not an evil letter, but a lie as far as I'm concerned. Here's a letter written by that famous segregation who said, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Now, in later years, here's another letter he wrote. I have your nice letter of recent dates regarding my attitude towards the matter of civil rights. During my terms as governor, I appointed more blacks to cabinet positions, to judgeships, to boards of trustees, and to the important boards like the prison board, the pardon, the parole, the ethics, blah, blah, blah. Also, the University of Alabama takes what they call the capstone poll, which is a scientific poll. As I was going out of office, when you're at your lowest ebb, they took this poll and the question was asked, do you think George Wallace was the best governor the state ever had? The answer was 55% yes, 45% no, but broken down into categories, whites said 50% and the blacks said 74%. Yes, 74%. And no, only 26. I received 95% of the black vote in 1974. And also in 82, when I ran for governor successfully, and when my wife ran, she got votes that were even better. I was given an honorary doctor's degree from Tuskegee Institution, etc., etc. One of the greatest honors I ever received. I received a standing ovation from the black audience when they put the cap on me. Oh, did my people really change their mind about you, George Wallace? I called up Tuskegee and I said, can this be true? And they said, yes, we gave him a degree. Oh, Tuskegee, segregation today, tomorrow, and forever. Oh, my gracious. These are pictures of the hideous people who killed the 3 civil rights soldiers and thought it was a joke. This poster that I have over here. All of this material is primary and incredibly important to the civil rights movement. Dr. King's funeral programs. This is a document backing all of these ministers, Martin Luther King, Abernathy, Shuttleworth, and Wyatt T. Walker, and it's signed by Dr. Martin Luther King and Ed Sullivan. And inside they talk about all of the accomplishments in this beautiful document. All of these items, priceless in documenting the civil rights movement. This is a collection on the Little Rock Nine, all important primary items. Montgomery bus boycott, primary items. Some more civil rights mixed in here. Now, would you believe that we had a woman magician in 1889 and that there were other black magicians? Would you believe that we had women wrestlers in the 50s who won championships? Would you believe that we had women right after the Civil War who organized traditional, professional performers, and they took them on tours? All of these things are relevant. All of these things are primary and rare. When you were a reporter and you covered the March on Washington, this is all the instructions that you got. Your maps, your ID, your banners, primary. Everything here, rare, primary. Everything here, incredible. Now, over here, we live in a country that worships sports. We're obsessed by sports, but we don't tell the true story of sports. African Americans were locked out of sports every which way. But you don't know, and nobody else knows, that American sports started right here on Staten Island where I live. They started in the borough of Richmond, another word for Staten Island. And it started with this guy here. His name is Bill Richmond. Who the heck is Bill Richmond? Bill Richmond was a slave, and he belonged to the rector of St. Andrew's Church in Staten Island. Boxing started in Britain. They loved it. They invented it. Have you ever heard of the Queensberry rules of boxing? That's because a royal member laid down the rules for boxing. Now, Bill Richmond was sent on an errand by the vicar of Richmond Town, and there were some Tories, redcoats. Remember, Staten Island was occupied by sympathizers of the king, and they taunted him, and he beat all three of them. When he beat three of them, the commander was astounded. He ran back to the vicar. He said, "I must have that slave." And the vicar said, "Okay." So he took Bill Richmond to England, and Bill Richmond became a sensation. At one point in the Revolutionary War, the major came back with Bill Richmond, and a dealer that I buy from him called me up and he said, "Elizabeth, that boxer that you told me about, can you believe that he hung Nathan Hale?" I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "No, I have newspapers. Do you want to buy them?" And I said, "Of course I do." So here's Bill Richmond about to aid in the killing of Nathan Hale. Now, as if this story couldn't get weirder, the people who belong to that church in Richmond Town called St. Andrew, they're Episcopalians, and some of them know this history. So they called me up and they said, "Elizabeth, there's a guy in England who spent 10 years in all the libraries documenting the story of Bill Richmond, and he's coming to Staten Island. He'd like to meet you." And I said, "Great." So I met him, and he wrote a book called Bill Richmond Unchained. Now, what was Bill Richmond doing in England? He established a boxing academy where Piccadilly Square is today. Who was his pupil? The King of England, King George IV. And when King George IV had his coronation, he invited Bill Richmond to be one of his ushers. Now, the story can't get any more complicated. One of these people from the Episcopalian church called me up, and they said, "Elizabeth, the New York Times has a full-page story about Bill Richmond because they're doing an archaeological dig and they're looking for his body. Do you want the paper?" Zip! Here's the story of the digging for the remains of Bill Richmond. They never found them, but he is still honored every year in England. They have a ceremony for Bill Richmond. In the 1700s, he was a champion. He's the beginning of American sports, and nobody knows anything about him or cares. In the late 1800s, the most important sport in the world was bicycle racing, especially in England. In our country, we had this guy named Major Taylor, who was our champion. But the people in England said, "How can we tell who the fastest man in the world is if we don't race against you? Come to England." And he said, "Oh, you honor me, but I can't come." They said, "What do you mean? The money we're offering, you can't come?" He said, "No, I can't come." They said, "Why?" He said, "Because you race on Sunday, and that's my religious holiday." They went back to England, and they said, "Well, we got to have him." So they changed the date of the races to Saturday. Major Taylor went to Europe. Thousands reached out for him and met him at the airport. And in the year 1902, the richest athlete in the entire world was a black man named Major Taylor. In 1902, a bicycle racer from America. There's a magazine that paid me to rent this picture because when you're a star, advertisers want you. And so he was a person advertising part of a bicycle part called the gear. Major Taylor, an African American, in the year 1902, the richest athlete in the world who nobody knows anything about. A lot of black people who call themselves racemen. This is a doctor, and he signs his work that what he does is yours for the race. This is an African American soldier from the Civil War who won the Medal of Honor, and he says, everything I did for my race. Okay, I love this. This is a sterling silver trivet, and it's in honor of the Emancipation Proclamation. This is another medal in honor of the end of the Civil War. And I love when I still have what the original cases were, because it helps to age and to establish the fact that these are not new items. This is one of these incredible things. I told you about Father Divine. This is a tribute to Daddy Grace. Daddy Grace and Father Divine were religious cult leaders who were competitors. And this is a bulb with Daddy Grace in the middle. And when you light it up, you will have Daddy Grace in your life. This is another World War I medal. This is a small tribute to Harriet Tubman and one to Frederick Douglass. This is an 18-karat gold charm in honor of Toussaint Louverture, our Haitian hero. And then this is also a necklace in honor of Toussaint Louverture.
I was going to ask you about him. I was going to ask you, did you?
This is a beautiful letter from Nelson Mandela about his projects. And this is a letter. Sammy Davis, as we know, was a friend of Nixon. So this is a letter from Richard Nixon to Sammy Davis. This is Sammy Davis explaining his commitment to his Jewish religion. This is a pinback that correctly calls him the world's greatest entertainer, which is what he was. This is a Dwight Eisenhower letter to Archie Moore, who was a Republican friend of his. This is Michael Jackson's contract when he appeared at Motown 25. This is a James Brown contract, and this, of course, is Frederick Douglass as recorder of the deeds. And this is a contract for Chuck Berry. So these are some interesting things. Now over here on the table, this is Jackie Robinson's American Legion hat. And when Jackie Robinson became a vice president for Chock full of Nuts, this is his desk plaque with his name on it. This is his business card. This is a card that says he can come into any baseball stadium in the world free of charge. This is his number. This is a badge for an honorary colored Republican in the year 1800. This is a tribute to Jack Johnson. These are some prominent Negro League players who were all inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame very reluctantly. This is a tribute to Medgar Evers. I love this. Pray for Obama. This is, of course, a nice necklace in tribute to Dr. King. Nat Turner, a vintage, has not Christ been crucified? Armed for defense. Now, here's one of these stories that I only came across 3 years ago, and it made me livid beyond belief. This is a caricature of the Statue of Liberty as a black woman, because that is what the Statue of Liberty is. The Statue of Liberty is a tribute to the end of slavery, and it has absolutely nothing to do with immigration. It's a tribute to the freedom of black people, and it's a hidden story. An abolitionist whose name was Eduardo de la Valle. He was such an avid abolitionist that he would come to America and stand on street corners giving leaflets begging for the end of slavery. And when slavery finally ended, he persuaded Bartholomew, the famous sculptor, to create a friendship sculpture and give it to America in honor of emancipation, not immigration. Not fair to us as a people not to have credit for the most iconic statue in America, the Statue of Liberty, a tribute to the freedom of slaves. This is a rare medal in honor of Mary Talbot, a woman who created the American Women's Colored Club movement. These are Reconstruction politicians and their calling cards. One of them, I already told you about the Civil War soldier who stole a warship. This is his calling card. His name is Robert Smalls. Okay, I'm not going to take that out. He's in the middle. Nobody has a CDV of Robert Smalls except for Elizabeth Meaders. Now, can you believe that our poor, pitiful slaves actually used to have reunions after slavery? Look at how pathetic and pitiful this picture is. A slave reunion. I have two pictures, one on the front and one on the back. Slave reunion held in Washington, D.C. This is a beautiful picture of the Harlem Hellfighters marching in victory after World War I, marching down Fifth Avenue. Ah, the pride. Now, Malcolm X. This is a little tribute to Malcolm X. And he has a pin back here that is so inflammatory, which he's capable of being. But he is, as Ozzie Davis called him, our very own Prince. So this is a little Malcolm X tribute. These are some magnificent sculptures that other countries created in recognition of the end of slavery in their own countries. Beautifully done. This is part of a tribute to Roland Hayes. I have his medal where he won first place in a singing contest, one of our early musical stars. Roland Hayes is his name. Over here, a tribute to two abolitionists, Charles Sumner, who was a post-Civil War congressman who was the greatest friend that African Americans ever had. There are some conferences that praise all soldiers of any war, and I went to one of them to buy some, and I said, "Do you have any on the Hellfighters?" And they said, "Oh, they didn't make anything for them, ha ha ha." I said, "Yes, they did. I have a set, but I wanted two." This is the Harlem Hellfighters. They brought jazz to Europe during World War I. All of the veterans were saying, "Send us those troops, send us that black band." And they were amazing, and they introduced Europe to jazz. Over here, I have a spoon in honor of Frederick Douglass, and every link on the spoon has a date of an event in his life. And I also have a spoon in honor of John Brown, one of the greatest friends that American blacks ever had. This is a tribute to Dory Miller, and I had a picture of him upstairs. This is a tribute to John Brown, again, right along with the spoon. And this is a tribute to World War I veterans. This is the logo people use when they put in ads saying they had a runaway slave. These are just some blings. This is our dear Mr. and Mrs. Obama. And these are some copies of rings. So these are some cherished items. I'd like you to sit down now. I'm going to show you what I call the jaw droppers. A watch. And in the Civil War, when you consider the poverty of these soldiers, as soon as they had money and self-esteem, they would get a pocket watch engraved to their own name. And this is a veteran of the Civil War. This is the beautiful case that his watch is in. This is a tribute to Joe Louis. These are sterling silver cufflinks. And this is something that was popular. It was called a Joe Louis Lucky coin. So these are a little bit hard to see. And then this is, that's okay. This is Roy Wilkins cufflinks. Now, oh, I showed you that. Okay. And over here, this is part of Colonel Charles Young, one of our great heroes of World War I and a Buffalo Soldier. This was on his desk. This is something that's so wonderful. This is a tribute to a woman who was in the Revolutionary War, and her name was Deborah Garnett. And she was the first, we think, African-American woman to volunteer. She called herself a man, and she participated in the Revolutionary War as maybe the very first black woman to be in a military engagement. Now, what I have here, I think this last section, a tear provokers for me. This is an 18-karat gold watch, and it opens in 3 sections, which is too complicated for me to do today. But it's inscribed, and it's inscribed to a Civil War captain from his men who all chipped in to buy a valuable, incredibly expensive 18-karat gold pocket watch. And his name is Captain Kinsley. And the men inscribed it, and they give the name of their unit and the name of their captain. And a researcher can find out what other circumstances, why would poverty-stricken Civil War veterans pool their money for an expensive 18-karat gold watch for their captain? There's one item that Civil War collectors go after, and it's something called the Benjamin Butler Medal. What is the Butler Medal? During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln said to all his generals, you have to lead these black troops into the battles. And they said, oh no, we are not leading no darkies nowhere. And he said, that is an order. And one of these generals who felt the same way was named Benjamin Butler. So he had a command of black troops, and he took them into battle. And he was astounded at their bravery. He couldn't believe it. And after the war, with his own money, for the first time in military history, he went to Tiffany, the leading designer of medals, and he said, make me 199 medals that I will give to these colored soldiers, for surely they will get no other commendations. And he was right. When the Civil War was over, they had a review and invited all the troops to the review, but They did not invite the Black Civil War troops. Benjamin Butler went before Congress and he said, "May my arms fall from my body. May my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I ever have a day in my life when I fail to honor the bravery of these Black troops." And this is my most prized possession. It is called the Benjamin Butler Medal. And I was looking and hoping for it for 20 years, and I finally had an opportunity to buy the Benjamin Butler Civil War Medal. And this is the original box, as well as the original cardboard box. The Benjamin Butler Medal, my most prized possession. Although maybe I will say it is my most prized possession, but I must also mention that I have another medal called the Crispus Attucks Medal, and they may be tied. The Crispus Attucks Medal says, "This is a medal in honor of Crispus Attucks, a Negro, the first to die in the creation of America." That is so profound. I didn't bring it down, to my great regret. The top of that medal has a Liberty Bell, and it pays tribute to the 54th U.S. Mass Colored Troops from Massachusetts. And it is a medal beyond belief. I may have to get it at the end of this presentation, just so Nataka can show you the Crispus Attucks Medal. Now, would you believe that this is a gold-plated bracelet of the Middle Passage of Black slaves? The Middle Passage in a gold-plated bracelet. This is another medal that is beautiful and important beyond belief. This is a medal in tribute to Colonel Charles Young, and the medal reads that the whole state of Ohio is paying tribute to the great bravery and courage of Colonel Charles Young. And I showed you part of his desk set. He was a Buffalo soldier, and that case over there is also part of Colonel Charles Young. Even the case itself is just so beautiful. It opens into 3 sections. Medals that Marcus Garvey gave to his followers, but they had to earn it by creating large membership and doing other things in service to his program. And one of them, the medal reads that you are a hero of the race, issued by by Marcus Garvey, the provincial president of his own country. This, sad to say, is a booklet from apartheid in which the bearer had to show that he had a right to mobility, the right to be moving around, and he had to wear this around his neck and keep another document in it. But this particular document, which I'm going to open, is his passbook. He had to have his picture, and on each page he had to explain why he was out of the township and who gave him permission to move around. This is a medal in honor of Oscar Dunn. And believe it or not, at one time we had a black governor in Louisiana. And I have a beautiful picture of Congressman Oscar Dunn. And thank you, because that's him over here. And this is part of the rest of the Reconstruction Congress, the big picture in back of him. And while you're over there, Nataka, this is an oil painting of a black rabbi in keeping with the fact that I have documented African American religion in all of its forms. And over here, I have a great oil painting of Elijah Muhammad. So that in my religion collection, we have, covered every facet of participation. And of course, I showed you Daddy Grace. He's a Pentecostal minister with a cult following. There was a time when I asked one of my favorite dealers if he had anything on emancipation. He never failed me. He said, "Of course I do." What did he have? He had this incredible watch. Instead of numbers, it spells out the word emancipation. And in the middle is a picture of Mother Liberty freeing a slave, giving a slave emancipation. Now, the final item that I want to share with you is Sammy Davis's Spingarn Award, the highest award that we African Americans give to our fellow humanitarians. This is Sammy Davis's Spingarn Award. I think his name is on the back. And this is one of my most prized possessions. Sammy Davis was the world's greatest entertainer, but he was deeply involved in the civil rights movement. This is a presentation of some specimens and samples from the Rebuttal. The bottom line is African Americans are miracle makers. Any African American walking and holding their head up and putting their chest out is a hero, because the mountains in our path, they have never gone away. Who built America? Well, you had to be here to build here. So there is no other nationality that has made a contribution that equals the contribution of African Americans that has to be viewed in context. We had barriers to cross, repression to overcome, unfair laws, and tremendous difficulties. A famous black hero whose name was Hannibal said, "I see no mountain." When he was told that there was something barring his path, he said, "I see no mountain." That's the history of African Americans. We've had mountains in our path. We went over them, through them, around them, and we have a story of unbelievable triumphs. And we are a proud people who are of patriotic inclination. We love America, and we want America to love us back. Thank you for this journey.